Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we dive into a different Disney Plus offering and discuss its history, how it holds up today, and our general impressions. If you like the show, we would love it if you like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, ring notification bells, all that fun stuff. Joining me once again today, we have Logan Wilkinson. How you doing, Logan?
I'm doing great.
Excellent. And Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cam?
Hey, what's going on?
What is going on? This week, we are wrapping up our run of Star Wars Visions Volume 2 episodes. We've been doing this the last couple weeks, obviously. So today we're going to be talking about Star Wars Visions Season 2, Part 3, the Bandits of Golak, The Pit, and Ayu's Song. The last 3 episodes of the season there. Why did we pick it? Because it's kind of our continuation of May the 4th be with you. These originally released May 4th, 2023. As we've been doing for the last couple episodes, we're basically going to do the stats of one, talk about it, and then kind of continue on with the second and third, respectively. But kind of overall stuff, these all had a runtime between 15 to 20 minutes. In the Star Wars animated timeline of things, we had our first volume of Visions way back September 22nd, 2021. Followed by last year's Tales of the Jedi, October 26th, 2022, and Zen, Grogu, and Dust Bunnies, the Studio Ghibli short, November 12th, 2022. Earlier this year, we had The Bad Batch Season 2. Leading up to May the 4th, we had Young Jedi Adventures shorts. On May the 4th, we had Star Wars Visions Volume 2 and Young Jedi Adventures Season 1. And upcoming on the animated front for Star Wars, we do have the TBD 2024 final season of The Bad Batch and a TBD season of Tales of the Jedi for Season 2. So starting off, we have the Bandits of Golak director is Ishan Shukla of 88 Pictures, which is based out of Mumbai, India. They worked on Troll Hunters and a number of other DreamWorks projects in the Troll Hunters universe, which I did not know was as big until I started looking through their portfolio page. They've been working with DreamWorks on that. That's kind of their biggest, most notable stuff. I did see they do also have a games division. They have one game currently and then 2 projects, project code name something. I was like, oh, that's cool. That's 88 Pictures. Ishan Shukla also was the writer on this one. And our cast of characters, this whole batch, all 3 of these had actual named people that had IMDb stuff I could draw from. So we have Suraj Sharma playing Charuk. He was in The Life of Pi and $1 Million Arm, and he's also currently in How I Met Your Father, which I think is still running.
It is still running.
Yeah, I mean, it's had its 2 seasons. I don't know if it's continuing on, if it's been picked up for a third, but he is in that. Sonal Kaushal as Rani is in the has a long-running credit in the Doraemon series, and she is also Chota Beam in the Chota Beam series of projects. Niraj Kabi plays the Inquisitor here, and Lilette Dubé as Rugal. Lastly, I do have a couple bits of trivia here for the Bandits of Golak. When Charuk and Rani reach their destination, the Orabesh letters on the large purple sign read Golak Mahal, while those on the smaller blue sign translate to hookah, a 3-ode hookah. Inside, there's another sign that also reads Golak Mahal with the words lunch and dinner underneath. The Imperial Stormtrooper Patrol travel by 614 AVA speeder bike. These bikes are based on concept art by Joe Johnston and were used by the Empire in Star Wars Rebels. And when Rani is running during the storm, sign on one of the stalls reads Pani Pani 70 RS in Orabesh. And lastly, near the start, when one of the train conductors bumps his head, obvious allusion to New Hope, 2 large buttons behind him are marked up and down in Orabesh. So what did everybody think of this one? Cameron, I'll throw it to you first.
I mean, I loved it. I thought that I will say 88 Pictures does such a great job with their animation. In the past, I watched the first season of the Troll Hunters show. I felt that it was like a lot of 3D animated shows. It lacks a lot of background. A lot of the care and efforts put into the foreground, and so backgrounds are usually left very barren. Um, but I did find that their animation was really far above everything else at the time. That first season had Guillermo del Toro like really closely attached to it, so I was really fascinated to see how it would go. Um, that all being said, that their past aside, focusing on this actual short, I thought it was fantastic. I love the big brother little sister dynamic. I really appreciated the end, um, very much in the way that it was about, like for him, it was about getting her to that next step, and he understood that his place wasn't beyond the stars, so to speak. It was very much like to get her to where she needed to go to keep her safe. Um, and I will say probably the thing that stood out to me the most was, in fact, the Inquisitor. The Inquisitor
Mm.
was phenomenal. I love the design. I love that. One thing I loved is how they were able to characterize what was clearly supposed to be like Indian Pakistani, like that part of Asia inspired, whether it's by the actual like humanoid people, like the actual humans, or but at the same time it blends it in that this could like that the way that they did it, it felt like they were playing with this is space and these are like space humanoids a little bit. It felt really really cool, but also I loved kind of like that anti-British colonial vibe that it had to it. Had a like felt a little RRR-ish in a like in the slightest ways. I'm not making big comparisons between the two, but the idea of this occupational force like the Empire, similar to another empire, and like the train sequence was very reminiscent of stuff from historical Bollywood films and things like that, of like running raids on British trains to get supplies and stuff like the rebel forces. It was really really cool to see kind of like this aspect of a culture that we at least have some familiarity with, and seeing it kind of juxtaposed in a alien space opera setting, and also having a precocious kind of like little girl who uses the force for super childish things and doesn't think about it, and all of that was just fantastic. I love
Logan, how about you?
Yeah, I think Cameron maybe likes it a little bit more than I do. But I also really enjoyed it. I echo a lot of his sentiments on the art style of the episode. I think it is really interesting and really I think all three of these episodes that we're kind of covering today are really interesting in just how different and distinct each one of the visual styles are, which could arguably be said for the whole season in terms of just how kind of varied they've been. But these three episodes in particular, kind of back to back to back, are so different from one and distinct from one another. I like a lot of the small touches. I like a lot of the small flourishes in this episodes. Right. I think it is the brother and sister dynamic, which, for all of Luke and Leia's relationship, we really know they're brother and sister for a third of a movie. Right. And, they don't ever have a physical meeting with each other, I guess I should say. In the sequel trilogy, right? Luke is obviously like a projection of himself and not like his actual physical being. And so we don't really get to see them being siblings. And so I thought that was a really interesting aspect of this story. Right? We don't really get a lot of sibling dynamics and sibling stories in Star Wars story proper. And so I enjoyed seeing that, right? I mean, it obviously, like Cameron said, very strong South Asian influence. You see, a lot of Miss Marvel and RR and those kind of stories here, and classic countless Indian Bollywood films. But to me, like all the best flourishes of that were small things. Right, it was like subtle musical cues. Right, it was kind of the way these characters kind of acted and interacted with one another. I thought were like kind of perfect. The actual Star Wars flourishes themselves were kind of interesting because you almost get like lulled into forgetting kind of what you're watching. And then it's like, all right, there's a lightsaber now, right? It's the Star Wars story again. And the stormtroopers pop up. But I had a really good time with it, right? I mean, I definitely liked it quite a bit. It's not my favorite one of the 9. But it is echoing a sentiment I think I shared a couple episodes back. It is one that has a lot of promise and potential to it. And I think with just like an extra layer of refinement and maybe just more time spent here, I would have really enjoyed it, right? I mean, I think this episode in particular, again, I just wanted almost more. The way it ends is on sort of a deliberate like cliffhanger in a sense of like not really kind of knowing what's next. But I love the recurrent motif of the flute and kind of the musicality of this episode. I think is very reflective of South Asian culture and kind of the musical cues that kind of flow throughout it.
Cool. So I've been, as we've been talking, I've been thinking, I think I'm going to say this is my favorite of the bunch of all 9.
Ooh,
wow. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
I really, really love this one.
Yeah. Convince me.
And I think part of it is also like in conjunction with, I just put a bunch of time into Jedi Survivor. And,
Sure.
And so there were elements between Jedi Survivor and then also one of the later episodes. I have like this thought in my head of like, you know what kind of Star Wars story I would really love to see? And I don't necessarily know what era you would maybe be able to tell it in effectively. I guess it would probably be like the prequel era, but like I would love to see a story of a brother-sister dynamic that is torn apart by Jedi not being like a great order of people. They just abduct children or take children away from their families, and loving system, and like have like the remaining family member like have a vendetta against the Jedi about that. That's obviously not what this story is about, but like it, like the brother sister dynamic that we got in this story like spun me off down that path of like that would be, I think, a real like imagine an alternate universe where the brother in this one is not okay with his sister being taken away from him and turns into like a Jedi hunter or a bounty hunter or something like that to try and get his sister back. Like that's a story that I would love to see. But the story that we get here still very beautiful and compelling. And I think really one of the things that stands out for me and continues to stand out for me as I think about it was the color palette of this one. Especially, the fact that they make a desert planet as beautiful and vibrant as they do after so many years of like going back to Tatooine, and it's all the same browns and like I loved how vibrant this one felt. With like the only other like inkling of that I can immediately draw from is that like planet they go to early on in Rise of Skywalker that's doing their big colorful festival stuff. But it like even that there's like the fact that this color and this vibrancy is so rooted in Indian culture. Obviously it's wearing its influence on its sleeve with that really. Just like stood out as like Star Wars can be so much more colorful than it is. And it's so disappointing that like so often desert planets are one palette. Ice planets are one palette. Even like lush planets like Endor are green and that's it. Like, and then, you get to the ships in space and it's always like grays and blacks and, whites. So like everything is so like, I mean, in the Empire stuff, it's meant to be oppressive, but like it's really seeing how all of those colors were popping on the screen for this one that I was like, I want more of this in Star Wars. I want to see more. Just throw everything and throw kind of all that beautiful paint.
I'm going to echo this sentiment in an episode or two here.
Yeah, there you go. Which I think like this. I mean, as a whole, I think this was a very good run of episodes for me. But this one, I think, did all of this, and then also story-wise, like I loved the opening bit on the train, where I thought, oh, okay, this is going one way. Like I was expecting this to be like a What's the Train to Busan? Is that the no?
Oh,
Snowpiercer. I was
Snowpiercer.
thinking Snowpiercer. Yeah, I was like, I've never seen Snowpiercer, but my understanding of Snowpiercer is like
Snowpiercer's good.
it's just all on a train and you're trying to like push forward kind of thing.
Yes,
And
right.
so like I thought, oh, that's a great format for a short form thing like this. You can do just the whole thing of trying to evade these guys and push yourself further on the train. And then when it turns into the like they find the refuge. And then we get the like third act of this of the Inquisitor kind of revealing himself, and the fight scene that did. And admittedly, I have very limited like resources and references to pull from, but like it did give me a lot of RRR vibes when stuff is flying around in the background. Everything slows down. The action sequence of that was again unlike Star Wars, but very distinctly like what I saw in RRR in terms of like playing with the choreography of the fight and the animation and the motion of everything. And it just it like there was so much new to Star Wars in this for me that I was like, I love that I can have seen so many Star Wars things in my life and still feel like I'm getting a whole new world introduced to me through this short. And yeah, for 15 minutes or whatever. And so yeah, they're like the story, the relationship, yeah, at the center, even though it does that thing that I hate of like the little precocious girl doing things that are obviously going to get her in trouble,
Yep.
doing things just to get her in trouble, like stealing a flute, like using force in a very openly like it's like
For me,
don't
yeah.
do that. But like even with that, there was still enough about this that I was like, I love every other element of this. You mentioned the Inquisitor. I pulled him as like the image for this particular episode that I have up on the screen because yeah, I thought he was like, he was another example of like, they did a great job of bringing in like Indian culture and Indian like costume design into his look. So he didn't feel just like every other Inquisitor we've seen and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So
it's not your standard Imperial uniform. There's some flash and flare to it that elevates it, and on top of that, there's something about just the way, and this is not relating to culture, it's the way that this Inquisitor does things. He does not whip out his lightsaber at the get-go to show I am the Inquisitor. It's moving people around. It's grabbing things. I'm just gonna sit down and you're farther away. Well, I want you closer, so I just nudge you closer. I lifted the like it's all this stuff that he does to show like to be an intimidating force without being like an overly threatening force that I love about it. Also, to give a shout out to what you were saying, deserts don't have to be Death Valley or Yuma Arizona. Especially growing up in Arizona, being a Boy Scout, going all across the state, just the state of Arizona alone, the number of different kinds of desert climate that you can find and get to is vast. And that's not including like the kind of like desert landscapes or desert-like landscapes in other parts of the world. And to just have your desert planet just be Tatooine every time is not good. Is it the iconic Star Wars look? Yeah, but we've had that for long enough. We're good to move past it.
I mean, like even the way the costuming still fits within desert planet motif, like the fact that like original Tatooine, everybody's in robes to like protect their body from the sun or whatever. Like the fact that the Indian robes kind of influencing the garb in this one is lightweight. It is the Gerudo tribe of Breath of the Wild and Legend of Zelda stuff. It is like it is, hey, we're not going to wear a lot, but it's going to be it's going to be us. It's going to be like our personality. It's going to have color and vibrancy and still fit within a world that is beaten down by an oppressive sun. Like it's light, so we're not going to be like just buried in sweat. Like even that as a touch fit, I think, incredibly well in a way that like so often it's just like, okay, everybody in a on a desert planet is wearing one kind of thing.
Everybody's wearing a poncho.
Yeah. So yeah, I very much I really like that episode. And then the
also shout out to him saying, by the way, I've definitely killed your dad. Like I definitely torched your village and killed everybody.
Yeah.
In
Even
such
though,
a casual tone.
yeah, and even though I saw the like reveal of the old woman as like a Jedi in hiding kind of thing,
I didn't see that.
it was still like a really cool thing when she busts out her cane into dual lightsabers.
Yep.
And like, because even that is a thing that
They love dual wield lightsabers in the Visions this season. There are a lot of them in this year.
yeah. But like the idea of like the elderly Jedi, apart from like Yoda, and I guess like we got it with Dooku, but like it's just not a thing we see moving around. Like part of that is like influenced by like, hey, yeah, Alec Guinness really couldn't do much at his age physically.
Right.
But like when they do play with like, if you are a Jedi, you can, you know, have this mastery of the Force that does allow you to do things that maybe somebody else your age couldn't do. I loved seeing her hold her own against this younger, cocky Inquisitor. So yeah.
Also, she like slices his throat and he just laughs. So good.
Yeah, good. Yeah, like I was like, for a split second, I was like, they're not gonna have him like his head fall off, are they? And like I didn't. It would never have been like a.
Yeah.
They're zoomed in on him and his head just plops off, but like, you know, a like over the shoulder shot and you just see something fall to the ground, and then his body falls to the ground or something like that. I appreciate that they did not do that.
Yeah, just a little cut across the throat, just efficiency. I love that aspect of it.
Yeah.
Also, him laughing reminded me when the Inquisitorius in Rebels tells whether it's Ezra or Caden, he says there are worse things than death.
Yeah, it's they say it to Kanan.
Kanan,
the season 1 finale.
Yeah, he says there are much worse things than death. That laugh immediately brought me back to that moment of just like, yeah, sometimes death isn't the end for an Inquisitor, and there's worse things.
Yeah, there was also hints for me of the Obi-Wan Darth Maul that you get in later Rebels.
Oh, true.
That fight. So yeah. I really, really love this one, and it's one I've been thinking about pretty regularly since. And so I love that like it sparked those ideas in me while also telling its own beautiful, colorful, vibrant, fun story and touching story. Any final thoughts before we move on to the next one?
Nope.
All
I
right.
enjoy how much that one appealed to you. I like that.
Did not see that coming. It was a good reveal.
Yeah,
I know. I'm very happy with that as well.
Yeah, I was looking through the other three. I'm like I've tried to kind of have that moment in the last couple of like, all right, I'll throw to each of you guys, and then like I'll save the one that I really like the most for me or something. And so this one I was like, no, I'm gonna subvert those expectations. So yeah, moving on to The Pit. This was directed by Leandre Thomas and Justin Ridge of D'Art Shtajio. Shtagio. I don't know how that's pronounced, but also in conjunction with Lucasfilm. They are based out of Tokyo, Japan. Projects that they've worked on include The Weeknd's Snow Child music video, episodes of Sound and Fury, and they also did some animation cleanup on Netflix's Castlevania. Leandra Thomas is also the writer on this one, and our cast of characters here, we have David Diggs as Crux, of course, from Hamilton and Blindspotting, Anika Noni Rose as Eureka, she is from The Princess and the Frog, Jordan Currit as Livy, she is in Home Economics, Cedric Yarborough as the old prisoner, who I always think of from Reno 911, Steve Blum as the commander, who is obviously a prodigious career, but I'm going to give him a shout out as Zeb in Clone Wars, and Matthew Wood as the Stormtroopers, of course, also known for playing the battle droids and General Grievous in Star Wars. And do we have, I think I have like one trivia thing for this one. Yeah. When Crux is giving his speech, the Orabesh text on the monument he is standing on translates to Crystal City, obviously in honor of the Kyber crystal that adorns the city. So what did everybody think of this one? Logan, I'll throw this one to you first.
Yeah, we are going from an episode that we had a lot of positives on to one that I think is probably pretty convincingly my least read episode of the series. it really didn't work for me, actually. I think this is, to me, like a pretty clear textbook example of like the pitfalls of 15-minute episodes.
But
Yeah. There was so much more I felt like that was lacking here as opposed to some other ones. Like I don't think it worked as like a singular 15-minute self-contained story. I think a lot of the emotional beats didn't really land. I think Crux's death really tonally came out of nowhere. It was a very brutal one. More so than like anything else in the season, I think. It just didn't really work. I think the kind of conversion of the citizens to the pit and everything, none of it really landed, unfortunately. I felt like it needed way more stuff to kind of connect a lot of the dots for me. It's one of the ones that I think partially just due to the fact that we had a whole season of it. Its animation style I think is good, but less like visually distinct than a lot of the other ones, partially because we had a whole season of anime episodes last season and anime influenced episodes. I just found it less engaging and less kind of eye popping than a lot of the other ones. The biggest, I think, positive I had is like the cool mural on the rock at the end of the episode. I thought was nice, but like, I think the Dark Knight Rises escape out of the pit didn't really work. I think the like Holes-esque digging for treasure buried here to find some kyber crystals didn't really work.
I definitely also thought of holes.
I did not.
I had a moment at the beginning where I was like, digging them holes, digging them holes.
It helps that Shravia had literally just watched Holes a couple weeks ago with some friends, so like for their book club, so like it's very fresh in my mind. But like, yeah, like I just think it didn't work, right? And I just think it was a lot of kind of parts that didn't really fit and mesh well together for me. And especially I think in this like 3-episode batch where I think the first and last episode are so visually appealing, and kind of different Star Wars stories and really unique ones, even if the first one maybe I didn't love, but I still really enjoyed. This one just sort of fell in between, I think, as just sort of like the other one out of the three.
Fair. I think for me, this one, I will say it's also like the weakest of the three for me, but I think I'm probably a lot hotter on it than you, because I thought this one, while I don't disagree with anything you've really brought to the table on it, I think for me those elements worked because there is like this, I think, weirdly aspirational Star Wars vibe behind it of like, obviously it goes like full ACAB kind of thing against the stormtroopers with 100%. Like the people like learning about this oppressive force and coming out and supporting, while at the same time it's like, all right, yeah, you guys could have like shouted down and said we're going to help you instead of just like walked away and then let this like silence come over the pit before you bringing in your ship or whatever. But yeah, like this, it struck me as, I think, much like, a lot of the movements we've seen in recent years, this notion of this undercurrent of like, oh, these problems have always been here, but the people that aren't directly affected by them are much less likely to know about them, and they're they live in their happiness and their and it's not until like it is really thrust in front of them and they are called to action that they say like, oh, that's happening, oh, we need to, like, we don't want that to happen. We like I think on a, like, you could have seen this on a Coruscant and people would have just kind of brushed him away and nobody would have batted an eye. So I liked this, the people of this one did take Crux's message, and the message outlives him, as he himself is kind of quelled, in very much like a George Floyd kind of allegory, and so many of those others that we've seen recently. I I will say, like, knowing that we were coming into this episode and there was one of these was going to be South African, I immediately thought it was this one because of like the diamond mine allegory that we were seeing here at the beginning.
Yeah.
So like when it turns out, oh, the next one was actually the one from South Africa, I was like, oh, that works too. But yeah, it was like it was a weird disconnect in my own mind. I will also say, like, there is something innately silly about this pit being dug so deep and people not realizing that they can't get out, and the Imperials just like up and walking away and everybody just then realizing they're trapped down there. I was like, how did you guys think this was going to end? Why did you not build like walkways back up? So yeah, like, but I will also cede that in addition to Dark Knight Rises, you mentioned Holes, the Black Adam just last year had a similar kind of like digging for that, one, beautiful thing that like the slave masters kind of like grab and take it for themselves. So it's well-worn territory, like I think a lot of Star Wars is, but it's still trying to take that known story beat and find a new way to kind of highlight it and bring it into the galaxy far, far away. And that being something as simple as like kyber crystals as a stand-in for the abusive diamond trade and stuff like that, it worked for me, I think, better than it did you, Logan. But I don't find fault with any of the things you kind of called out about it. It is, I think, less stunning compared to some of the other animation and art styles we've seen on this. In particular, like there was that prolonged sequence of like the time lapse of the mine being built bigger and bigger, where it's like,
right.
Like I had to kind of squint. I was watching this, like I straight up gave up on trying to watch this on a web browser.
Good, watch them on TVs.
So yeah, I was watching it on my big screen, and even on my big screen, I'm like, is the mine getting bigger? It just looks like it's flipping through like 5 or 6 frames that are just kind of showing work is happening. I couldn't see a visual like noticeable difference to how the mine was chaining over time, and it was much more just like, oh, look at the lights going to and from the town kind of thing. So yeah, there were definitely elements of like, this is odd design choices. And then I think also to your point of it suffers from the abbreviated 15-minute format. I definitely agree that I think there were like complete story beat moments that are just kind of skipped over and it's like, oh, okay, that's like Crux being just thrown down. It's like, oh yeah, okay, so what do they do now? Oh, they're just going to like sing and chant. Okay, yeah, I guess I didn't like that. Didn't strike me as a thing that had basis versus like if they had seeded that earlier of like, maybe there was like an attempt at an uprising earlier in the episode that stormtroopers shot a blaster out or something and everybody silenced or something. We didn't have that, so there are moments that kind of feel like, oh, that felt like it came out of nowhere. Cam, what'd you think of this one?
Man, I like this one way more than you guys did.
I had a feeling that was the case on this one, so that was why I jumped in on the second butt on that one.
Sure, so we get a slow climb rather than just like a just
or I mean, and also like leave the let like the one who's going to really gush about it be the last voice we hear on it too.
Yeah, I will say this one is, I think it's a very unique. The background for this studio is that it's an American owned and fully black owned studio. That is based in Japan and does animation. Like basically is an attempt to bring a different kind of lens to Japanese animation style. And I've seen their work on the Weekend music video that I thought was fantastic. So I didn't know that they were behind that, but I was very much looking forward to this one because of kind of like, this is a very interesting thing because this might have fit better with volume 1. With kind of like its background in that. But it is kind of standing out a little bit. If you had told me like, oh, this one is the South African one, I think I get where you're coming from on that. what I will say is that David Diggs needs to do more vocal work, more voice animation work. He's fantastic as Crux. I think he's absolutely amazing.
That's interesting because I thought it was pretty. I think that was one of my issues with this one is that I thought all the voice. I mean, it was very minimal voice acting. Wasn't a lot happening, but like none of it really stood out for me. And Crux almost felt too. Almost like soap opera, like too like over the top for me, so it didn't work a lot. So that's interesting that you really enjoyed it.
I did. I really thought he did a great job with it. I really was compelled by Crux as a character, as this. And I'm surprised you didn't like it, Logan, considering how hope punk the entire episode is. It's very much about
that's my whole
this
persona.
idea that people are inherently good, and that the Empire and all of this is just they're obscuring the truth. They're obscuring the light from people, and once people realize the light, I mean, it's why when Crux is going around trying to talk to individuals, it doesn't work. But then he sees like where he needs to go and what he needs to do. It's very symbolic in a lot of ways. I think that a lot of the like the things that are about like you guys are like missing plot beats. I think that's pushed to the side for more about like what this is supposed to like the open interpretation for a lot of the events, a lot of the things that happen. You mentioned Trevor, George Floyd. I think that Crux is a stand-in for basically I thought of actually Emmett Till when I was watching it. A young man who and I thought it was, but the thing that really I thought was very interesting, the reason why they did that is they stunned him in the alley. They didn't kill him in the alley. They didn't just be like, oh, there's a dissident, blast him. That immediately struck me as they are trying to create this falsehood of false wealth and false reality of prosperity. And as long as you keep people in the city, as long as you keep them away from the truth and about where like, and it also speaks about things like where like the production of labor is, or the production of labor is taken from the laborers by their oppressors. There's touchstones of workers' rights, of slavery, of human rights, of two cops thinking nobody's gonna care that they just murdered a kid. There, like, this has strong ACAB, this strong anti-authoritarianism, anti-fascism feelings to it. So I see this. I think that as far as like narratively, it's certainly not the strongest. It may be actually be the weakest of this 9. But I think that symbolically, and whether that's because it is a very distinctly particular Western lens taken and placed in like an Eastern or Japanese sort of animation style. Like, is it the most impressive? Does it blow? Like, is it the most? Is it the one that kind of like that we talked about with the last episode? Is it the one that like brings in all these cultural touchstones to not to embellish, but to emphasize a stark difference between this and everything else that has ever had Star Wars attached to it? No, this is, as far as animation style, this feels like there's a lot of paint by numbers. There's a lot of things being done that aren't in particularly stand out. But the thing I loved most about this entire episode, I loved that nothing about this had to do with Jedi. Nothing about this had to do with Sith. There was no there's not this ultimate good guy saving the day. It is just people. It is just a story about people in this galaxy. And I felt that the only weak point I felt was the little kyber crystal. Turns out the little girl's force sensitive.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like,
that's the only.
The girl at the end is alluded to be a Jedi,
or just force sensitive. But like, yeah, no. But I know what you mean. That's the force connection. That's the Star Warsy connection. Otherwise, this is just a sci-fi story, right? With armor that looks like stormtroopers. The thing I love about that is that in the end, Crux was right. That if you tell people and you give them a way to and show them the light, they will latch onto it and take it. And I felt that Crux's start, where he tells people the truth, and that leads to people being like, "Oh, we're hearing something from coming out of town." They're not like, remember people's reactions when he's talking about the children and all these people that are out there, and people are like, "That's wild," but they're not. But nobody's outright saying, "Oh no, you're crazy," or "That's a lie." It's completely believable because it's the Empire, but also it's the idea that people, oh, this Crystal City, the city of light that came out of nowhere in the middle of this desert. Like, it leads to the things that you can kind of look past and say, or not look past, but look at and say, I see kind of the path around it. I see why. The idea that the things that helped Crux in his journey up the hole were not mechanical, it was natural. The armadillo mole that was there helped him along his journey. It felt very like symbolic and poetic in a lot of ways, that the land itself was helping him lead him out of this hole. And I can see people taking this as like with several interpretations. And I think that even though narratively I don't think it's as strong as the others, and animation wise I think it's probably the weakest out of this entire batch. There's so much that I pulled from the story that I felt like, was it the most like succinct, like, oh, they're all of a sudden they're singing and people show up and then they disappear, but then they come back, and it's like, yes, does it work as narratively well as the others? No, but there's an impression of symbology going on here that I feel is very poignant and important. And that's one of the reasons why I loved it so much, because this was an episode of Star Wars based universe that's about people. So
great. Then we will wrap up with Ayu's song, or was it Ayu's song? This was directed by Nadia Darius and Daniel Clark of Triggerfish, based out of Cape Town, South Africa. The Triggerfish has worked on adventures in Zambezia, Kumba, and SEAL Team, been some of their previous projects. The writer was also Nadia Darius and Daniel Clark. And our cast of characters on this one, we have Mpilo Janti as Au. We have Deneo Dutoit as Au's singing voice, Tumisho Masha as Abat, and Cynthia Erivo as Kratu. Cynthia Erivo, kind of the name of this one, having been in Harriet. She was the Blue Fairy in last year's terrible Disney Pinocchio, but she was good in it. And she will be Elphaba in the upcoming Wicked films, because they're making that play into 2 movies for no reason. And then lastly, Faith Beloyi as Atu. I don't think there was any trivia on this one. I'll kick this one off. I very much really enjoyed this one as well. Again, a very vibrant and colorful one. Loved kind of getting to see that. Loved the stop motion animation, but still, I mean, seemingly almost all CG, or at least like I didn't feel like there was a physicality to this one like I did in a couple of the other stop motion animated ones. Like this one felt like stop motion but in a computer, but still like in a cool and interesting way. And I loved the like I mean, for the lack of better comparison, like the Build-A-Bear nature of the design of Au and like her people and kind of like the just the like stitched together vibe of it, I think was very cool and very fun to see, mixed with all of the vibrant colors and stuff like that. And I loved the notion of this girl. Like, it's another one that I feel like from the jump I had a sense of where it was going to end when they kind of tell us this, like, you know, all this kyber crystal has been poisoned by the Sith from long ago, and Jedi have to go through this very taxing ritual to purify it. And this girl loves singing, and the singing clearly has some effect on the crystal. I was like, all right, it's probably she's going to, you know, be a purifier of it by the end. Sure enough, she is. So there was a moment in there where I was like, oh, I don't like that, like the dad is kind of trying to silence her, and not out of like necessarily a malice, but like out of a, hey, it's dangerous what you're doing, and in an unknown way, so it's probably better if you just don't sing.
I thought that was pretty known.
I mean,
he showed his glove, it has like that entire like burn mark on
it. But I think like, well, I mean, and so the problem is, I guess there,
like, he didn't know why.
It's because he was interrupting the singing, and but doesn't realize that, like, if he had just let her sing, it would have been fine.
Yeah, no, like, I hear you on that.
Yeah, it's her singing clearly does something, but yeah, as we see by the end, like, oh yeah, if he just lets her sing, it's you know, it's a good thing. But yeah, like visually, this one was just a really cool joy to look at all throughout. Had a good time with this. Liked the again, it's like she's obviously a Jedi kind of thing. So when she comes out and does like the lightsaber glide down and like force grabs the falling family, I was like, I don't know how the physics of that work. How did she beat terminal velocity? But okay, whatever.
She's a Jedi.
Yeah, exactly. Jedi things. But yeah, even her ship design had like just a fun flavor to it that I feel like we don't see all that often. So yeah, I had a lot of fun with this one. While thinking maybe it was a little simpler than I was looking for, I think, as like a finale, but it also was a very stunning finale in terms of like the culmination of, or the end of this season of things, because of its beautiful, vibrant, and then like just lovely singing as well. Cam, we'll go to you, and then we'll wrap up with Logan on this one. What'd you think of this one, Cam?
I loved it. I thought it was great. I don't think there's a single thing in this in Visions that can go wrong for me at this point. Mark my words, next season's going to be terrible now. Now that I said that, but so far, the Visions project has been a massive success for me. It has been a tremendous opportunity to see Star Wars handed into the hands of other people and showing that collaboration is, in fact, the best thing for Star Wars. The more people, the more diversity, the more different lenses, views, and other things that that Star Wars can be. And I think this is a perfect culmination. If you had told me, hey, there's going to be a stop animation thing about some, like, multicolored bears that mine kyber crystals, but the Sith corrected the kyber crystals, and so now the Jedi take a lot of work for like some Jedi to do that, but also nobody leaves this. Like, you explain the premise to me, I'll be like, that's so bad. Who wrote that? Like, what fan fiction is this? And even at the beginning, when I'm like, is this stop motion? Is that cloth felt? Oh, am I getting Yoshi Woolly or Kirby Woolly World? No, Yoshi Woolly World vibes to this. Oh, I don't know how I feel about it as a person with like a person who's like about textures, and I'm like, I don't really know about the texture of this. I don't think I care for it. And then being immediately won over by the charm and I loved it. It's like, okay, they live in mountains. Okay. And then it's like, she immediately pops down. I was like, oh, this is like a Star Wars pod, like a little like modular home in Star Wars. Cause you can see like the doors and things are similar to other doors. And it's immediately, it's like the little things. It's the little things, the little satellite attached to the house that's particular for Star Wars. It's like all these multiple little things that I love that they picked up on and included and made wonderful. Also, the wide shots that we get of this this short, and the architecture designs and the design of how things are laid out across the screen was very almost Ghibli-esque in a lot of ways. Especially the Jedi ship. I was like, the moment I saw it, I was like, huh. And then I'm like, the more and more I get into it, I'm like, this feels so Ghibli. It feels so Ghibli-esque. And I love just because it feels comfy. There's a comfort to it. It never feels like I was in danger very much because she's on an adventure and like, we're all here for it. And the danger is not in her, like letting her do what she's doing. It's in holding her back. Like you said, Trevor, it's that you're right. 100%. It is like the dad's just like, hey, I think this is really dangerous. Please don't do this, which is totally natural and normal. And then, like the Jedi being like telling her telepathically, like, not all hear the voice, and not all are wise enough to answer its call. And it's just when he goes in to save her, and he thinks he's saving her, and we hear the hiss and the and like the anger of the kyber crystal being interrupted from being purified. And they're doing it's doing what it's doing. And it's like, it's so great because it brings life to kyber crystals. They're not just like this tool or this cool thing. There's a life to them in a way that really hasn't been shown before. And it's done so incredibly well. And I can't get over how sick the Jedi was when she came, like she just came down the side of the cliff. The only time we see a lightsaber come out is just to do that. And I'm like, I did that in Jedi Survivor multiple times. It's very cool to see this happen in like it here right now. Also, she's rad as hell. She uses the Force to swamp a storm around them so they stay safe from the debris. And then we get that awesome moment where Au gives her song. And is it going to be like, they're going to have a hard time? He's like, I got to let you go. And it's just like, no, he understands this is her calling and she's off. And so the next scene we've seen is them having one last little bite to eat before she's off on her adventure. You know, the Jedi was there also like I have to leave now. It's like I'll be leaving in a fortnight. You have time to think, and it's like you love seeing that. Like that is good representation of Jedi taking young people from their homes. It's like you have a fortnight to think about it. It's okay.
Yeah, even in that beat, I was like, because I think I was already off on that kick of like from the first one this week. I was like, oh, like when it cuts back to her and they're having dinner, I was like expecting it to be like, oh, she's not gonna go. She doesn't want to leave her family for that. She can still do the things that she does. She can still sing here and
I
be
thought
on the
about
planet.
that being a possible.
And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, that like I would have been perfectly satisfied with that ending too.
But then he says what he says when she's leaving. He goes, "You're going to be the first one among our people to go to the stars." And it's like, oh wow, this is so cool because it's talking about like the generational gap of not generational gap in a negative way, but that or rather generational leap that some people make. And it's like, yeah, it's in a way they told me that same familiar story. Authority figure wanting to keep the kids safe, all of that, and they told it to me in a way that I wasn't expecting, and I really was able to enjoy it, and was just fun and wonderful and a great adventure for like, a young character to go on. I absolutely loved it.
Great. Logan, what did you think of this one?
I was taking notes. I really loved it. In fact, I've only grown to love it more since I saw it, and I saw it like today. I want to give particular shout out to Cameron. I think everything you just said was super beautifully said, and I'm going to say it worse now, but nonetheless, for me, the big, like, I'm glad that he went to like, you know, Yoshi and that kind of comparison. For me, it kept screaming out Little Big Planet. It just reminded me of Little Big Planet so much throughout this. And as someone who's a huge Little Big Planet fan, I'm all about it. I love it. I love the little like claymation stop motion mixed CGI thing. I think it's the most beautiful episode of all 9. I like absolutely loved it. And I, like for like the first second I was like, ooh, okay, do I like this or not? And then I was like, oh yeah, I'm all about it. I'm absolutely hooked in it. Especially when they started like adding these like cascading, exploding colors of red and light bouncing off each other and the kind of the vibrancy of like the shimmers. And I thought it was absolutely gorgeous. I think it is a beautiful, beautiful episode. And in this season of 9 episodes, we've, I think, you know, gone back to this again and again and again, but the diversity of animation styles and visual looks of these episodes, I think, ultimately for me, take this season above the first season alone, just because of how different and distinct and how it seems like there's a animation style for seemingly everyone out there. There's so many different looks and feels, and I think this one in particular really spoke to me. Cameron said it too, but I think comfy is a great word for it. It's just a very comfy, cozy episode of Star Wars, right? And this can coexist alongside a, like, you know, police brutality, police state episode right before it. And one about like the internal conflict and getting over grief and loss from like a few episodes back. And, you know, can coexist with a woman wanting to like paint a painting and trying to deal with her like grief of being a Sith Lord. These all can coexist. And that is so much of what makes Star Wars so much fun, right? And so silly. And again, I go back to me and Cameron on this a lot because we're the two, you know, horribly afflicted Star Wars fans here, but it's what makes it fun. 100% accurate. Yeah. Accurate. It's what makes it so much fun, right? Like, that's the thing. Like, I know that a lot of Star Wars fans have weird relationships with George Lucas, and that's fine. You can have thoughts on George Lucas, whatever you want, but I've always really liked George Lucas because I think he sort of understood at the end of the day that like Star Wars is like fun and like it can be a lot of things and it can be this giant sprawling epic space opera. And alongside that, we can have Ewoks and we can be really stupid and we can be really dumb. And he didn't really give a shit if you had your own fan fiction or if you wanted to read all of these novels that were or weren't canon. It didn't really matter, right? They were just Star Wars stories. And I think Visions utterly embraces that legacy of Star Wars. Just like, does it matter if they're canon or not? No, it's a fun Star Wars story. And if you like it, great, latch on to it. And if you don't, there's 100 more out there to find, right? And I think this whole seasons of Visions has really, been about that message of Star Wars, and especially after, I think, the last decade in the Star Wars fandom, where I think it has been more tumultuous, we'll say, than that, right? And I think Star Wars at times has taken itself maybe a bit too seriously. It's sort of refreshing to just be like, yeah, like this is a silly, cozy, comfy 20-minute long episode about like Troy said, stuffed Build-Your-Bears who sing to cure kyber crystals that have all gone bad. And it's like, lit. That sounds utterly ridiculous and silly, and I'm all about it, right? But then like the connective tissues, right? And like the seeds of stuff that's there, right, are really cool, right? And I think, the main character's relationship with her father versus like Luke and Uncle Owen. And I think there's so much in those two characters, and yet they handle the situation of, letting go so differently, right? And the fact that her dad does just say like, all right, cool, yeah, go, you got this, right? You're gonna be the first one of us to like go out into the stars, versus like Uncle Owen, right, is,
burnt to a crisp. Yeah.
Burnt to a crisp, but also just like, kind of kept trying to hold Luke back again and again and again, and just kind of led to this like resentment. And yeah, I think, there's maybe no bigger message in Star Wars than just like sort of believing in yourself, right? Like that is Luke's arc as kind of the titular Star Wars character, right? That like the whole thing is built around, and it's just sort of like him believing in himself and his abilities to go make some sort of positive difference out there, right? Like from the Twin Moons shot onwards. And I think there's a lot of that in this like young, precocious girl who just wants to sing, who just wants to speak, who just wants to do something, right? She believes in her ability. And even though it's dangerous and dumb and she definitely shouldn't do it, she does it anyway. She trusts herself, right? And it pays off in a really big way. And that to me is very beautiful. It's very Star Wars. It's very Luke. And yeah, I loved it. I think it's one of my favorite episodes this season. I've kind of grown on it since I saw it. And I think it is my favorite looking episode. And more than anything else, I think it is a really nice way to end the season, I think.
Great. I want to throw it to you guys one more time. Obviously, I mentioned that the Bandits of Golak is my favorite episode of the 9. Now that we've gone through all 9, which of the episodes do you guys think is your favorite of the bunch?
Cameron.
I have to go last.
I think,
as a reminder, we had in that first episode we had Sith, which was the painting one, former Sith painting that Logan alluded to earlier. We had Screecher's Reach with the ghost Sith and the Sith Mother at the end. We had In the Stars, which was our kind of like environmental, kids bringing down the Empire facility there. We had the Ardman, I Am Your Mother, nice little just goofy family race. We had Journey to the Darkhead as we faced off against evil scorpion tail Sith guy up among the big light and dark heads. We had the Spy Dancer, our kind of very French resistance episode from last week. And then obviously our 3 episodes today, the Bandits of Golak, The Pit, and Ao's Song. Did I give you guys enough breathing room to land on a favorite, Logan?
I think ultimately for me, I said at the time, and I'm going to stand by it, although I think this latest episode is probably my next favorite. I think Journey to the Darkhead is still my favorite, ultimately. I really liked it. I think, like I said at the time, I think it is just operatic, right? It is just sort of that. And, I am someone who really likes that. A lot of my favorite Star Wars stories are these kind of grand operatic adventures, both in terms of like epic, grandiose fights or battles happening, but also in terms of like this kind of epicness of like emotions, as silly as that might be to say. And I think, you find that in Return of the Jedi, Revenge of the Sith, and I think you find that in Journey of the Dark Head, which ultimately is almost exclusively about this kind of emotional journey they go on, with Our Wu Song probably being my second favorite as well, because I just think it's delightful.
Cool. All right, Cam, you've been making a lot of faces.
Moment of truth.
Have you landed on one?
Gotta pick.
Like pick.
Yep.
Stop
Yep.
silence.
The spite
Silence
answer.
is terrible
the
for
spite answer.
podcasts.
The spite answer is mine.
Spite answer. All right, excellent.
Yep. I loved all of these. I thought they were all phenomenal. But I think top to bottom, when it comes between animation, story, and kind of like the homage and imagery of things like the French Resistance and other things like that, I think the spite answer, it does so much.
I love how much you guys liked that one, because it didn't click for me as much, but you guys both liked it.
It's honestly, if first off, fat stormtrooper representation. Conscripting stormtroopers gets hard. We got to go into those deep reserves sometimes. All right.
Absolutely.
We don't got clones anymore. Like
that's true.
No, just there's something that episode does that just is so much. It's so much. And it covers so many things I love about Star Wars.
Yeah.
And I think that one is my favorite of these 9. This I think this is harder to choose my favorite out of these 9 than last season.
I agree.
Yeah. Agreed. All right. Cool. Well, here's hoping they bring it back for another round sometime with Star Wars Visions Volume 3. Let's dive into the report card where we grade from A+ to F. Logan, what do you want to give Star Wars? What do you want to give these 3 episodes, I guess?
That's a good question. Because I think 2 out of the 3 I really liked. 1 in particular, obviously. But the other one was my favorite episode of the season, so it's sort of a weird juxtaposition here. I'll say altogether a B, right? A B to B plus. I feel happy with that, right? Right? Because I probably give it a B, an A, and then like a C or a D for the other one. But so I would say a B feels really solid for me.
Cool. How about you, Cam?
Oh, it's an A plus. Like, once again, Star Wars Visions undefeated in its way of just like stampeding its way through everything that I love about Star Wars. Volume 2 absolutely cements it. This is the best thing to come out of Star Wars. More Star Wars Visions, please. Inject it directly into my veins, please, and thank you.
Do it.
All right. It gets an A for me too. I think these were especially because obviously one of the nice things about these is, hey, they're quick. And so, if it doesn't click for you, there's another one right around the corner. That's always a delight. And even the ones that clicked with me less than others still were fun, new, interesting ideas and new flavors of Star Wars because we got so many great new voices contributing to the stories this year. All right. Extra credit, other suggestions if you like this. We have The Mandalorian, Star Wars The Bad Batch, Tales of the Jedi, Andor, Star Wars The Clone Wars the series, The Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Zen, Grogu, and Dust Bunnies. Or, as Logan likes to say, just watch Andor 8 times.
Hell yeah.
Anybody watching anything else on Disney Plus? Any extracurriculars for this week?
Nope. I watched Night at the Museum, though, a couple weeks ago.
Yep, talked about that last week a little bit.
Haven't watched anything since the last batch of Star Wars Visions and this batch of Star Wars Visions. That's all I've been watching. Sorry.
There you go. All good. Well, that is going to do it for this week's episode of That D Plus Show. Thank you guys for joining me to talk about all of these Star Wars Visions over the last few weeks. We did just get the announcement yesterday that Indiana Jones is finally making its way to Disney Plus on May 31st. So there's a pretty good chance that our June episodes are going to be a Summer of Star Wars-esque jaunt down some pulpy mid-century relic hunting. So
I'll host those episodes. I got that.
Stay tuned for that. Feel free to bring, I'll still go through all of my normal rigmarole, but feel free to bring any trivia you want to those episodes as well.
I'll watch the making of documentary trial again.
Yeah, you can follow Logan at LeftyLogie, Loggy. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Logan?
Hey, I'll give a shout out to Cameron Abbott, just generally, but also because he's playing through a Star Wars video game, which we all love. It's called Jedi Fallen Order. It's really good. And I just want to give a quote from today's That Nerdy Site tweet, which is my favorite thing to watch happening now. If you don't follow, you should follow that Twitter account. It's really good. That just talks about how Cameron and Cal experience the majesty of Kashyyyk, the superior, all-life is connected planet. Wookiees are better than Na'vi. I agree, but on all the fronts, really everything Cameron said across the board there, I would agree with. Go check it out. Cameron's having a lot of fun with that. All the Let's Plays are really good, but I give them shout-outs a lot, and I don't give this one a shout-out enough. So go watch Cameron play through Jedi Fallen Order. It's very fun. And Kashyyyk, if I say so myself, is one of probably my favorite areas of the game.
It's up there for me. Yeah.
Great.
Go check that out. Also, anything with Wookiees is great.
Yeah.
Accurate.
You can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot, 2 B's and 2 T's. Anything you would give a shout out to there, Cam?
Yeah. Trevor just finished his amazing Let's Play series of Breath of the Wild. And now he's immediately right afterwards putting out a Let's Play series of Tears of the Kingdom.
Yep.
And his adventures through that. So go check those out over at youtube.com/thatnerdysite. Or if you're already here watching the youtube.com/thatnerdysite, subscribe, check out those playlists. We got a lot of Let's Plays and people should be watching.
And for this in particular, there is a dedicated That D Plus Show Star Wars series playlist of just all of the Star Wars things we've talked about on That D Plus Show.
You want to know how the summer of Star Wars ran and find out how we ended up charting things? Yeah. Go check that out. The answer might surprise you.
Yeah.
Probably doesn't, though.
I'm sure it will.
You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. Thank you for that shout out. Yeah. And in particular, one of my Tears of the Kingdom episodes basically replaced our Elden Ring series that we've been doing this week
because we're not ready to go back.
We've not returned to Elden Ring after just getting our butts handed to us in last week's episode. But also, if you like more Star Wars stuff, Cameron and I also did a spoiler cast of Jedi Survivor this last weekend on That Nerdy Site show. So go check that out as well if you want to hear our thoughts on that. We also do, as we always do with spoiler cast stuff, we have a spoiler-free section kind of giving our general non-spoilery thoughts on the game as well. But basically, we both really, really liked it. I think both of us thought it was a nice, substantial step up from Jedi Fallen Order. And it was like everything you want from a sequel of learning the lessons from the last game. So yeah, go check out all of that fun stuff from us. You follow all the latest from us over at That Nerdy Site, or go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest. If you liked what you heard, once again, please remember to rate, review, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, ring notification bells so you get notified anytime a new video goes live, Monday through Friday. Thank you for joining us. As always, stay nerdy, be good to each other, class dismissed, and may the Force be with you.
And also with you.